Welcome, dear listener, to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on a really fascinating journey into the vibrant, sometimes baffling world of international idioms. Our guide for this adventure is this wonderful book, playfully titled, I'm Not Hanging Noodles on Your Ears.
That's quite a title.
Isn't it? And our mission today, it isn't just to translate these colorful expressions. We want to kind of peel back the layers, discover what they really reveal about different cultures, the amazing ways our minds work, and maybe even the origins of language itself. So prepare for some surprising linguistic detours.
Exactly. And you're going to find, I think, that these seemingly simple phrases, they offer a unique shortcut, almost, to understanding some pretty complex cognitive processes and human behavior. We're talking about those real aha moments that might just fundamentally shift how you think about words and, well, the world around you.
Okay, so let's unpack this then.
Right.
Why idioms? Why would someone dedicate an entire book to them? What's the deeper significance here, beyond just collecting quirky phrases?
Well, the author, Jag Bhalla, he was driven by something quite personal, actually, his envy of multilingual people, but he also flags this fascinating scientific angle. Lifelong bilinguals, on average, they tend to get Alzheimer's about 4 years later than monolinguals.
4 years?
Right. Yeah, it's not just a fluke. It suggests that being bilingual builds what scientists call cognitive reserve. Think of it like your brain developing more robust pathways, more connections. It helps compensate for age-related stuff.
So it's like mind muscle.
Exactly. Mind muscle. So just by diving into different languages, even if it's just from your armchair, you're basically giving your brain a serious workout.
That's a pretty compelling reason right there.
Okay.
Okay, so if we get technical for just a second, what exactly is an idiom? How are we defining it here?
Okay, at its core, right, an idiom is a group of words used together as a phrase, but the overall meaning, it isn't clear just from the individual words themselves, like the classic, he kicked the bucket. You can't figure that out from kick and bucket, can you?
Right, makes sense.
The book calls them untranslatable even in their own languages, almost like pre-solved little cryptic word puzzles. They might seem inefficient, compared to literal language, but gosh, they are incredibly popular in every language. They kind of bypass logic in this really interesting way.
Okay, here's where it gets really juicy, I think. Idioms as this incredible window into how different cultures see things, right?
Yeah.
Like universal human experiences. Let's start with something we all get, but maybe express differently. Love.
Absolutely. And it's striking, isn't it, how even one concept like love gets fractured and nuanced across languages. So while English has this one big word, ancient Greek actually had 4 distinct terms. You had affectionate love, companionate, charitable, and erotic love. It just immediately broadens the scope,
4 types. Okay. And how do other cultures describe that really intense feeling, like being madly in love?
Oh, it gets vivid. Germans might say they are neck over head or in love until over both ears. Okay, kind of physical. But then you go to Colombian Spanish, and if you're madly in love, you are swallowed like a postman's sock.
Like a postman's sock. Seriously.
Seriously, can you picture that? Or, okay, for flirting, the Spanish phrase to pluck the turkey sounds odd, right? It means to make love at a window, like sweet-talking someone on their balcony.
Plucking the turkey. Okay.
And then there's that really amusing French proverb. By candlelight, a goat looks like a lady. A bit cynical, maybe, but funny. A warning about appearances in romance.
Those are fantastic. It really highlights how cultures frame even basic emotions so differently.
Yeah.
What about beyond romance? How do idioms show up with, say, family and social ties? Do we see similar quirks?
Oh, we do, definitely. Think about how many families develop their own little language, their families, those private words or inside jokes that fill gaps only they understand.
Totally.
And it extends to groups of friends, too, and communities. That's where slang often develops, partly to create that natural in-group versus out-group feeling.
Like creating belonging. So how do other cultures express closeness? Like we might say, thick as thieves or 2 peas in a pod.
Well, get this. For close friends, Mexicans use a phrase that's much more visceral. Fingernail and dirt.
Fingernail and dirt. Wow. That's close.
Isn't it? Imagine that intimacy. And for family, okay, a Russian kissing cousin isn't just distant. They're described as 7th water on a starchy jelly.
7th water on a starchy jelly. What does that even gives you a sense of dilution, I guess?
Exactly, a sense of dilution. And it's also, fascinating to think about evolutionary psychology here. Some propose that language itself might have first emerged for social coordination and basically gossip. They playfully call it the tut-tut theory, relating it directly to how apes do social grooming. It's all about building and keeping those social
The
bonds.
language might have literally evolved just to help us stay connected, and we'll talk about each other. That's a wild thought.
Yeah.
Okay, what about animals? We use them all the time. Elephant in the room, rating cats and dogs. Do other cultures use animal idioms differently?
Indeed. While animals themselves don't use idioms, idioms certainly use animals, widely. So when we smell a rat, that sense of suspicion, a Frenchman, interestingly, he suspects an eel under the rock.
An eel under the rock. Okay.
And a German, maybe even more charmingly, worries something isn't totally pure rabbit. Each image, it just tells you something about cultural associations, doesn't it?
It really does. It's like a cultural fingerprint in a phrase.
Exactly that. And okay, instead of eating crow, admitting you're wrong, a Frenchman would swallow a toad.
Swallow a toad.
I
Ugh.
know.
Yeah.
And when we say it rains cats and dogs, Germans get more specific. It only rains young dogs.
Young dogs. Why young dogs?
Who knows? But it's specific. And for
Yeah.
something really important, a German says, there the donkey falls.
Yeah.
Like a moment of significant consequence. And if you beat a dead horse, the Chinese have a much, much harsher image. They beat a drowning dog.
Wow. Okay. That's dark. These show such a spectrum of cultural intensity and perspective.
Right. It's incredible.
It sounds like even our own bodies, how we talk about them, are described differently through idioms. We talk about having a gut feeling or maybe a heavy heart. How do other cultures kind of embody experiences in their language?
Oh, they absolutely do. And it really highlights some profound cultural differences in how we perceive our internal landscape. So while we often think of the heart as the seat of emotion, right, the Japanese, they frequently locate true feelings more in the stomach area or even the navel.
The navel.
Yeah. So when they regret something really deeply, the phrase translates as they gnaw on their own navels.
Gnaw on their navels.
And when something is laughable, ridiculous, they can make tea with their navels. These anatomical bits, they suggest that cultures literally feel and maybe even process emotions in different physical places.
That's truly mind-bending. It makes you wonder how much our language is sort of pre-programming our internal experience. Any other body-related ones that stand out?
Well, instead of us saying, I'm not pulling your leg, when you're being serious, Russians say, I'm not hanging noodles on your ears.
I love that one. Hanging noodles on your ears. The image is so specific.
Isn't it wonderful? And to dupe someone, the Japanese might pull the hair out of someone's nostrils.
Ouch.
Yeah. And for a sycophant, someone really fawning, the Japanese have the incredibly descriptive goldfish poop.
Goldfish. Okay, that's vivid.
Right. And these aren't just quirky ways of talking. They really hint at profoundly different ways cultures experience and maybe locate emotions and interactions within the body. It kind of challenges our assumption that universal experiences are felt universally. It suggests language actively sculpts our internal physical landscape in a way.
Okay, so bringing this together, what does all this linguistic variety tell us about how our own brains process language and maybe all information? Is language just a clear tool, or is it actually shaping our minds?
It seems it's far more than just a transparent tool. There's strong research suggesting language significantly impacts perception. It actively shapes it. For instance, Russian speakers.
Yeah.
They're actually faster at telling different shades of blue apart.
Faster.
Because their language has distinct, separate words for light blue, goluboy, and dark blue, sishny, their brains are basically wired by the language to see those differences more readily.
That's wild. So the words we have literally change how we see the world.
Precisely. And even more strikingly, unconscious exposure to language can actually influence behavior. There was this experiment at New York University, right? They showed that students who were subtly exposed to words associated with old age, like wrinkled or bingo, stuff like that, afterwards they walked, on average, 13% more slowly down the hallway, and they weren't even aware of it. The linguistic priming subconsciously altered their physical actions.
Wow. That's subtle but powerful.
It is. And in the brain itself, processing idioms involves more areas lighting up than processing literal phrases. It shows this complex cognitive activity where your brain has to switch gears, basically, from the literal meaning to the non-literal metaphorical one.
So language isn't just reflecting our thoughts. It's an active shaper of our minds, influencing perception, even behavior, sometimes completely under the radar.
That's exactly right. And it seems our brains are uniquely built to actually enjoy this stuff, language novelty and wordplay. This ties directly into humor, actually. Apparently, something like 2/3 of jokes depend on some kind of wordplay.
That makes sense.
And like jokes, idioms involve a sudden shift in meaning. But here's the key difference, the interesting part. While a joke's shift happens consciously, you get the punchline idioms seem to be resolved non-consciously, your brain just gets the meaning almost instantly without you having to actively sit there and figure out the puzzle each time.
Okay, this feels like it's leading to a bigger question, almost philosophical. What do idioms tell us about how language itself might have evolved? There are theories flying around, aren't there?
Oh, the origin of language. Yeah, that's a really heated debate among scholars, still very much up in the air. Some theories, often with funny names, suggest language came directly from emotions. The poo-poo theory, basically vocalizations of disgust or joy. Or maybe from mating calls, the woo-woo theory.
Poo-poo and woo-woo.
Okay, right. But a more prominent view, sometimes called the oops wow theory, suggests language wasn't really designed for communication initially. It proposes language emerged almost accidentally, sort of as a side effect of our brains just getting bigger and more capable. It implies language just happened because we developed the cognitive machinery.
So an accidental byproduct of bigger brains? That sounds kind of logical on the surface. But where do idioms fit into that picture? They seem kind of illogical.
Well, exactly. This is where some leading psycholinguists push back. They argue that idioms are not insignificant peripheral oddities. They're not just weird exceptions. In fact, they contend that idioms are actually central to language, and they often operate outside the normal rules of grammar.
Ah, so they break the rules.
Right, which directly challenges that oops, wow theory. If language was just an accidental byproduct of increasing logic and capacity, why would these seemingly illogical prepackaged phrases be so common, so ubiquitous? The sheer ubiquity of idioms suggests that our brains don't just process words one by one. They seem to store enormous numbers of these prepackaged expressions as fundamental units, like mental shortcuts.
Wow. So idioms aren't just quirky phrases or linguistic fun. They're actually profound evidence about our deepest cognitive architecture. They suggest our brains are designed to use these bundles of meaning, not just build everything logically from scratch all the time.
Precisely. They imply that our minds are fundamentally designed to operate with these prepackaged bundles of meaning, and often, crucially, non-consciously. And this really challenges what's been called the traditional hegemony of reason, the long-held idea that our minds are primarily logical, conscious, rational processors. In fact, a lot of cutting-edge science now suggests that as much as 90% of our information processing happens non-consciously. Our emotions, for instance, they're often described as habits of thought that implicitly guide our conscious reasoning without us even realizing it. It's time, as the author puts it rather nicely, to enlighten up to the full, amazing complexity of our minds, not just the conscious tip of the iceberg.
Well, that was a truly deep dive, wasn't it, into the surprising world of idioms, showing us how they reflect culture, how they subtly shape our thoughts, and even how they challenge scientific ideas about language evolution itself.
They really are far more than just colorful turns of phrase. They're like these powerful cognitive tools demonstrating how our brains are wired for complex, non-literal thinking, often way below the level of conscious awareness. They're like fingerprints of human experience, really.
So the next time you hear an idiom, whether it's something familiar like raining cats and dogs, or maybe something new like I'm not hanging noodles on your ears, you're not just hearing words. You're tapping into one of those prepackaged bundles of meaning, a kind of linguistic fossil holding clues to cultural history, the evolution of language, and the amazing, often hidden workings of your very own mind.
So maybe the question for you, listener, is what stands out to you about all this? How might these insights into idioms change the way you listen to language day to day? Or even change your understanding of how your own mind processes information? Does it make you think differently about how much of your daily thinking happens below the surface?
Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.